under the lake ice, aren't we? That's the bottom of the temple.
I know where we are. We are on Bikanel Island. There's a place us Albed call home near here.
A war between Yevon and the Albed?
Let's go kick those Quado out of our home!
Sid, he's my dad. The Summoner's Sanctum is where we keep the Summoners, safe there.
They might get hurt on their pilgrimage, so you kidnap them?
The pilgrimages have to stop. If they don't, and they get to Zanarkand, Uni will die, you know?
Yuna!
What's Seymour doing alive?
He is dead as Jisco was.
What's a Machina doing in the temple?
You are to stand trial.
I expect it will be a fair trial.
Of course it will.
Chapter 30. Prisoners.
The High Court of Yevon is now in session. The sacred officers of this court seek nothing but absolute truth in Yevon's name. To those on trial, believe in Yevon and speak only the truth.
Yuna is asked what caused her to do everything she has done against Yevon, and Yuna points out that the real traitor is Seymour, as he killed his own father. Kelk is shocked to hear these accusations, but Seymour calmly says,
Hadn't you heard?
Yuna also points out that Seymour is already dead, and as Lulu points out, it's a summoner's sacred duty to send the dead, and so Yuna was only doing her job. Yuna begs Micah to send Seymour, and after he walks up to the front and begins laughing, he says that if he sent Seymour, well, she would have to send him too. Seems Micah is also an unsent, and something which comes as a shock to none of the Maesters. It seems they have come to the conclusion long ago that the wisdom of the dead is preferable to the misguided failures of the living.
Men die, beasts die, trees die, even continents perish. Only the power of death truly commands in spirit. Resisting its power is futile.
Yuna asks if the lives of everyone that have died fighting sin have been pointless, but Micah tells her that it wasn't pointless. Sin can't ever be defeated, but the lives of those who die fighting sin give the rest of Spear a hope, and thus the life and death of summoners is never futile.
Never futile, but never ending.
Yuna is unable to accept what she's hearing, and thus Micah concludes that those who reject the truth are traitors. Therefore, they are guilty. As Kinak said, fair trial.
Get me out of here! I want out now!
After the trial, we see Tidus and Auron imprisoned in what looks like a giant birdcage. Tidus is desperately trying to get out, but Auron stays calm, knowing he's wasting his breath. When Auron assures Tidus that Yuna will survive, as she is strong, Tidus realizes that if she does survive, it'll just be to die beating sin. He finally starts to realize that everything in Spira seems to revolve around death, and asks Auron why this is, to which Auron says,
The spiral of death.
Huh?
Summoners challenge the bringer of death, sin, and die doing so. Guardians give their lives to protect their summoner. The Faith are the souls of the dead. Even the Maesters of Yevon are unsent. Spira is full of death. Only sin is reborn, and then only to bring more death. It is a cycle of death, spiraling endlessly.
Later, Kinak arrives to tell them that their sentence, and totally not execution, has been decided.
Really now, what person would execute a dear friend?
You would.
Tidus is thrown in a large area flooded with water where he meets Wakka and Riku, and where they're just expected to die from starvation, I guess?
Ugh, well, that's a lame way to kill someone.
This is such a weird sentence. If you wanted them to starve, why reserve such a giant spot for them? Just put them in a cell. Whatever. Later, we see Micah, Seymour, and Keenock speaking. It seems Kelk was the only maester bothered by Jiskel's death and thus left for Mount Gagazet.
Ever their answer. Hard-headed, hardly useful.
Seymour, despite everything, still believes Yuna could prove useful, but Micah wants her dead as she has disturbed the Order of Yevon. Knowing that there is a small chance that Yuna and the rest may survive their sentence and find a way out, Micah decides to place guards at the exit. These areas have exits? They were placed in a dungeon with exits? Why? Just throw them in a cell. Why would you just throw them in a dungeon with an exit and just hope they don't make it out? Ugh, whatever. This whole prison sentence is really dumb, honestly. After some research, it turns out that the whole idea of this prison, aka Via Purifico, is to purify the criminal of the transgressions. So if they manage to escape the prison, then they are considered forgiven. Therefore, it is more of a redemption process than a prison. It just has a very high rate of death. Seymour volunteers to stand outside of the exit of Via Purifico, in case Yuna makes it so he can kill her, but Keenock, skeptical of him, tells him that he will go with him, telling Seymour that he can't blame him for not trusting a man that's willing to kill his dad. Inside the maze like Via Purifico, we see Yuna making her way through the labyrinth. There, she meets Auron, Lulu, and Kimahri, who join her, and at the end of the road they find Isaru, who has been ordered by maesters to kill a traitor. Little did he know this traitor would be Yuna. As much as it pains him, however, the temple's orders are law, and he is a devout follower, so with that, Isaru commences an Aeon and on-Aeon fight. Interesting thing about Aeon fights is that since the summoners are beckoning the same phase, when one summoner is using an Aeon, another summoner can't use that same Aeon. So, first Yuna fights Isaru's version of Ifrit, then Valifor, and in the end, Bahamut. When the fight is over, Isaru tells Yuna how to leave this place, and as Yuna walks away, Auron tells Isaru,
Your pilgrimage is over.
Meanwhile, Tidus, Wakka, and Riku make their way out of their prison, because this too has a giant gaping exit. And in the end, everyone regroups. Riku immediately runs to Yuna, and Tidus tries to get out some kind of apology, but the words won't come out, and even if he could, it wouldn't matter much because Seymour arrives soon after to ruin the mood. With him are 3 Seymour Simps, a warrior monk, and Keenock. Never mind, not Keenock. Seymour killed him, but you see, Seymour was just being a nice guy because now he's free from his fears that come from being a power chaser. How nice of him. According to Seymour, death has freed him from worry and fear and has given him an eternal, peaceful sleep. From the looks of it, this is what he wants for all of Spira. If everyone in Spira dies, then all the suffering in Spira will die. Can't have suffering without life. This has been his plan all along, literally to deliver death to all of Spira in order to save them from their suffering. How? He wants to become the next Sin. This is why he needs Yuna. This is why he wanted her to marry him, and this is why he was okay with her continuing her pilgrimage. Seymour, being a maester of Yevon, knows the cycle of sin. He knows that the final Aeon would become the next Sin, so he wanted to marry Yuna to build a bond with her, so she would use him for the final summoning and then become Sin. They don't know all these details just yet though. Without a word, Kimahri and his watermelon-sized balls charges at Seymour and stabs him with his halberd, but Seymour isn't unsent, so he just takes it.
Unpleasant.
Noticing he won't be able to convince Yuna, Seymour decides to fight to quote-unquote give them the deaths they seem to want so much. Breaking apart his Simps and Keenock into Pyreflies, Seymour is able to gather them onto himself and become stronger, thus becoming Seymour Natus. Kimahri quickly realizes he fucked up, turns to Tidus and the rest and says,
Run! Protect Yuna!
Despite some protests from Tidus, Auron convinces everyone that the best course of action is for them to listen to Kimahri and run. So everyone runs down the Bevel Bridge as Kimahri stays behind. However, not too much time later, Yuna decides that she's not leaving Kimahri behind. Tidus, who's eager for a reason to go back and fight Seymour, tells Yuna that protecting her is their job. So if she runs back to Kimahri, well, we'll just have to follow. So with this, Yuna and Tidus run back to Kimahri.
Let's go! Hey, Kimahri! Leave some for us!
This prompts everyone else to follow behind soon after. Quick note, O'aka still helps Tidus and the rest out, despite knowing that Yevon sees them as traitors. He still does business with them. As everyone comes back to Kimahri, he looks disappointed that everyone came back instead of keeping Yuna safe. So, having no choice, they prepare for battle.
So, you too seek freedom from this painful life?
You talk too much, Seymour.
Along with Seymour, one also has to fight Seymour's creepy little friend, Mortibody, which heals itself by sapping health from Seymour. He's not a very loyal friend. During the fight, Yuna shows how done she is with him.
It is good to see you again, Lady Yuna, but you don't seem pleased.
I'll only be pleased when you're gone to the far plane.
And Auron shows that despite how shitty Keenock had become, he still cared about his old friend.
Although he was not the man I once knew, Keenock was still my friend, Seymour. You will pay for his death!
Eventually, Seymour does indeed pay with his life. Again.
We escaped with our skins intact, but Yuna lost something. I could already tell her faith was shaken. Yevon had betrayed her. I felt like I should do or say something, anything. But nothing came. I was just as lost as she was. And then...
After the fight, the group run off to an area in the Makalani woods. Auron notes that they will have to avoid Bevel from now on, and Yuna, distraught about the hole she's gotten herself in with her own religion, has gone off to think on everything on her own. Although with Kimahri, she's never truly alone. While they hide away, Riku comes to the conclusion that despite the results of a summoner's pilgrimage, she has no right to stop Yuna if it's what Yuna wants. Then both Lulu and Auron agree that Tidus should go to Yuna, so he does just that. Tidus finds Yuna inside a shimmering lake with Kimahri not too far off. Yuna, knowing Tidus is nearby, says that she always thought this would be easier, with everyone cheering behind her and helping her. Finally, Tidus reveals that he knows everything about the pilgrimage, about the fate that she is to inevitably endure. He apologizes for all the things he said they could do after defeating Sin, hoping it didn't make her sad, but Yuna says those things made her happy. Tidus then takes over for Riku, and it is now him that tries to convince her to just not do it, not go through with her pilgrimage, to forget it all and live a normal life. Now that it's Tidus offering the idea, Yuna starts to give it some thought. She actually says that she may just do it. She starts contemplating on how surprised everyone would be, how Riku would be happy, how Lulu and Waka wouldn't take long to come around, as they never wanted her to do it to begin with, how Kimahri would just go along with whatever she wanted, and how Auron would probably not be very happy. After this, they start contemplating on what she would possibly do without her pilgrimage. I mean, this is what her whole life has been about. Tidus has the idea of finding a way to take her to Zanarkand, his Zanarkand. He starts getting excited, but talking about how they can all fly there in an airship and have a party at his house. Yuna joins in the excitement, thinking about how she could see Blitzball and see Tidus and his team in action. How she could see the city and the stadium all lit up at night, fantasizing about being one of Tidus' fans cheering him on. Their excitement builds up until Tidus begins talking about the sunset, describing it in detail, almost seeming nostalgic, talking about how pretty it is. Yuna says that she'd like to see it someday, and when Tidus turns around to tell her that she can, he finds her crying. Crying because she let herself have a moment of bliss. She let herself fantasize about a life that she knows, realistically, she will not have. Because despite all the excitement, Yuna can't bring herself to quit her pilgrimage.
I just can't. I can't go.
Yuna.
Chapter 31, Yuna's Determination. Yuna and Tidus sit by the lake after their moment of romance. Yuna tells them that she will continue as, no matter what kind of life she could have, even if she could live that life with Tidus, she could never forget the people she let down. Tidus, respecting her decision, simply tells her that he'll be with her to finish her pilgrimage, and he's still her guardian.
Unless I'm fired.
Tidus tells her that he will stay with her not until the end, but always. I think this may be his way of saying that he's going to find a way for her to finish her pilgrimage without dying. By the way, Kimahri has been creeping on them this whole time. I guess now after the underwater romance session, now he decides he's going to give them privacy. Both Yuna and Tidus eventually make their way back to the rest of the group, where Yuna informs everyone that they will leave at dawn, apologizing for everything she's put them through. Then the group rests, and when morning comes, they head out of the Macalani Woods and onto their next destination, the place where so many summoners have given up on their pilgrimage. The Calmlands. When the party reaches the Calmlands, Lulu informs them about some of the history of the Calmlands, how it used to be the arena for summoners' showdown against Sin. After the Calmlands, there are no more towns, no more roads. From here on out, it's just a pilgrimage. When Arn tells Yuna that many summoners lose their way here, Yuna lays on the ground, takes a deep breath and says,
I've always known where to go.
Tidus helps her up and promises her that he won't let her die, that he will find a way.
I told Yuna I would find a way. I guess I wanted to believe that words could make it come true.
On the way down the plains, they find Macon, the old historian, who tells them about more history about the Calmlands, nothing I haven't gone over in past videos. Later, the group take a small break at a nearby shop. There, they are greeted by Father Zook, the ex-summoner that Lulu and Waka guarded before Yuna. According to him, Grand Maester Micah has told the people that Yuna was the person who murdered Maester Keenock and thus issued a kill-on-sight order. He also informs them that under their calm surface, Bevelle and the Church of Yevon in general are in disarray, which will make getting around easier, Arzoran says. Zook tells them that Maester Kelk de Ronso left for Gagazet after Keenock's murder, and then tells them to be careful as they are now enemies of Yevon. After Zook leaves, Tidus talks to his friends for a bit. Lulu informs him of who Zook is. Kimahri tells him that they're going to Mount Gagazet next, his home. And when Tidus says that they may see his family, Kimahri tells him that he has no family. But he doesn't consider himself to be alone. Then, after coming to terms that they are officially traitors and enemies of Yevon, Yuna tries to put up a strong front, but admits that in reality she's worried. Then, Tidus goes to Riku, who has come to terms with Yuna that Yuna isn't stopping for anything or anyone. But Tidus tells her that he's going to find a way to keep Yuna alive even after calling the final Aeon. Riku keeps doubting what he says, and Tidus keeps trying to stay optimistic, but eventually he says,
I'm tired of talking to you. It's always but this, but that.
But...
Let's think together.
Okay.
And if we can't think of something, we find another way.
Okay.
So now Riku and Tidus will try to work together to think of a way of keeping Yuna alive. Finally, Arn mentions how, considering the plan that Seymour admitted to before their fight, he doesn't think that Seymour and Micah are on the same page, as he doesn't think Micah would approve of just killing all of Spira. Arn then becomes worried that if Yevon breaks down, Spira will too. Eventually, the group continue on to the Calmlands, where they, once again, meet Belgemune. After she eases Yuna's minds about her label as a traitor by telling her that summoners aren't tools of Yevon and that their purpose is to Spira, they once again start an Aeon fight. And after the fight, Belgemune seems very impressed with Yuna, if she wins. Then she gives Yuna the Aeon Soul, which lets the player improve the stats of Aeons using items. She then tells Yuna that she will be waiting in the Temple of Ramium, so if she wants more training, she should seek it out. Finally, the group make it across the main section of the Calmlands, the wide open plains. In the next area, they cross a bridge, but before they can get all the way through, they encounter some Seymour simps who order them to go with them by order of Seymour. Of course, Yuna doesn't, and so after saying that Seymour doesn't need them alive, a Stone Golem Fiend starts walking up to their location and thus starts a boss fight, the Defender X. This fight can be pretty tough as the dude is super resistant to most attacks and his haymaker hurts a lot. However, with enough defensive strategies, the group can manage to slowly whittle down his health until they finally beat it. After this fight, the group make a quick stop down into the valley under the bridge. There, they find a cave which Wakka soon realizes is the cave that Lulu's first pilgrimage came to an end. This is where her first summoner died. However, knowing that there's a faith inside this cave, Lulu guides Yuna in, despite seeming very hesitant to go in herself. Once inside this cavern full of pyreflies, Riku wonders why there would be a faith in a place like this instead of a temple. As it turns out, the faith in this cave was stolen from a temple a long time ago. Why? Well, as Arn says,
with no faith, summoners cannot train. Without training, they cannot call the final Aeon. Without the final Aeon, they cannot defeat sin. That is why.
'Cause then the summoner won't die.
This realization makes it very clear to Wakka who it was that stole the faith. It was probably the Albed. Even Tidus has to admit that he agrees with Wakka on this, but Riku is understanding because, realistically speaking, they're probably right. Anyways, the group continues down the cave, and after some teleporting, they finally come to the end of the cave where they find an Unsent. An Unsent Lulu is very familiar with. It's Lady Ginnam, Lulu's first summoner.
Forgive me. I was too young.
Yuna attempts to send her, but Ginnam does a seizure-causing attack, which just stops Yuna for some reason. Realizing that there is no humanity left in her, Lulu brings herself to perform one last duty to her as her guardian, defeat her so she can be sent to the far plane. This fight isn't against her as much as it is against the Aeon she calls, this one being Yojimbo, a samurai Aeon which brings with him a dog. His attacks can be pretty nasty, but I've never really had any problems with him. But to be fair, I normally do this after getting my celestial weapons, so I can normally beat him pretty quick. Anyways, after the fight, Ginnam disperses into pyreflies, hopefully moving on to the far plane. Lulu finds it weird that it didn't hurt as much as she thought it would, assuming that she's just gotten used to farewells. Wakka assures her that she's just stronger now, and Lulu, hoping that she never fails Yuna, hopes Wakka is right. After this, they find the stolen faith inside a dug-up hole at the end of the cave. This faith, however, is a bit of a cheapskate. He's kind of a mercenary, so after asking what they want out of him, Yojimbo agrees to join them, only after they pay him money. A lot of it. There are some things you can do to make this cheaper, but he still requires a lot of money, even when you get to as cheap as he'll go. But he is very confident in his abilities, Hell, if you try to undercut his prices too much, he'll even say that you want a phoenix, but you offer chicken feed. Yeah, he's the phoenix. Anyways, after some bargaining, Yojimbo joins the party, and if you thought that was bad, just so you know, you need to pay him more each time you want him to attack. The more you pay him, the stronger the attacks he will use. It's even possible to pay him so much that he will use an instant kill attack, but it's a ridiculous amount of money. This is why I never actually use him. I just get him for completion's sake. Anyways, the group make their way out of the cave and finally make their way out of the Calmlands.
Sometimes Yuna would just stare off into the distance. I finally understood why. She was saying goodbye to the places she'd never see again.